In 1995, Michael Jackson was at the peak of his History World Tour when a chance encounter at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center would shatter his heart and change his understanding of loyalty forever. What the King of Pop discovered about his forgotten childhood dance teacher would lead to the most secret act of compassion in entertainment history. If you've ever wondered what happens when superstars remember those who shaped them, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments about a teacher who changed your life. It was a humid August afternoon in 1995 when Frank DeLeo, Michael's longtime manager, made an offhand comment that would resurrect ghosts from the past. Michael was visiting the children's cancer ward at Cedars-Sinai, something he did regularly but always in complete secrecy. As they walked through the sterile hallways, Frank mentioned something that made Michael stop dead in his tracks. "You know, Mike, I could have sworn I saw Rose Williams yesterday in the hospital lobby," Frank said, adjusting his glasses nervously. "Remember her? Your old dance teacher from the early Motown days? Though she looked so frail, I wasn't sure if I should approach." Michael Jackson, now 37 years old and the biggest entertainer on the planet, felt his world tilt. Rose Williams. The name hit him like a physical blow, transporting him instantly to 1965 when he was just 7 years old, and the Jackson 5 were still a dream in Berry Gordy's mind. Rose had been more than a dance teacher. She had been the patient, brilliant woman who had taken a hyperactive little boy from Gary, Indiana, and taught him how to move like magic. "Rose?" Michael repeated, his voice barely above a whisper, that familiar childlike quality creeping in. "Are you absolutely certain it was her?" Memories flooded back like a broken dam. Rose Williams, with her perfectly coiffed hair and stern but kind eyes, standing in the corner of Studio A with her hands on her hips, counting out beats. 1, 2, 3, 4, Michael. Feel the rhythm in your chest, not just your feet. She had been the first person at Motown to see beyond his raw talent to the discipline required to harness it. While Berry Gordy focused on the Jackson 5 as a group, Rose had pulled young Michael aside for private sessions. "She sees something special in that boy," Diana Ross had whispered to Berry after watching one of Rose's sessions. "The way she works with him, it's like she's sculpting a masterpiece." Rose had been different from the other Motown staff. She didn't just teach dance steps, she taught performance philosophy. "Dancing isn't about showing off, Michael," she would say during their afternoon sessions. "It's about telling a story that words can't tell. Your body is an instrument, and every movement should have purpose." The young Michael had hung on her every word, especially when she spoke about the legends. "I taught the Temptations their signature walk," she had confided to him one day. "I showed Diana how to command a stage. And someday, little prince, the whole world is going to watch you dance." Frank nodded grimly. "She was in a wheelchair, Mike. Hospital gown. She looked, she looked like she was fighting something serious." For the first time in decades, Michael Jackson forgot he was a superstar. The carefully constructed walls of fame and protection crumbled, revealing the 7-year-old boy who had spent countless hours in Studio A at Hitsville, USA, learning to glide across the floor under Rose's watchful eye. "Find her," Michael said quietly, his voice carrying that steel determination that had made him the king of pop. "Find Rose Williams immediately." Within hours, Anthony Pellicano, Michael's private investigator, had mobilized a discreet search. What they discovered would haunt the entertainer for the rest of his life. Rose Williams, now 65 years old, was indeed a patient at Cedars-Sinai, battling late-stage ovarian cancer. But the woman who had once commanded the respect of Motown's biggest stars was facing her final fight completely alone. The investigation revealed a story that broke Michael's heart into pieces. Rose had never married, never had children of her own. After her Motown years ended in the early 1970s, she had quietly returned to Detroit to teach dance at a local community center. She had lived modestly on a small pension, and when her cancer diagnosis came 6 months earlier, she had sold everything she owned to pay for treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. Dr. Patricia Hoffman, Rose's oncologist, painted a picture of a woman facing death with the same grace she had once brought to the dance floor. "She's remarkable," Dr. Hoffman told Michael's representatives. "Never complains, always says please and thank you. She talks about her students from the old days, especially one little boy named Michael, who she said was destined for magic. She has no idea how prophetic she was. Rose's hospital room told the story of a life lived in service to others. The walls were bare except for a single frame photograph, a black and white image of 7-year-old Michael Jackson from 1965, mid-spin, with a note scribbled on the back in Rose's elegant handwriting. To my little prince, dance like the world is watching. Love, Miss Rose. But what Rose had been hiding from the hospital staff would devastate Michael when he learned the truth. Sarah Chen, Rose's night nurse, had noticed the elderly woman's careful habits during her 3-month stay. She would never use the call button, Sarah would later reveal, even when she was in obvious pain. She would apologize for every small request as if she felt guilty for needing help. And she would never let us throw away any food, even when she was too sick to eat it. Rose's daily routine had become a careful dance of dignity masked by desperation. Each morning she would wake before dawn and attempt to style her thinning hair, determined to look presentable for the doctor's rounds. She would practice her old Motown choreography in bed, moving her hands and feet under the covers, whispering instructions to herself as if she were still teaching. Now step, touch, turn, and remember, it's not about the moves, it's about the feeling behind the moves. The elderly dance teacher had developed heartbreaking ways to cope with her isolation while preserving her pride. She would write letters to former students she could no longer locate, never sending them but keeping them in a small box under her bed. During the long nights when pain kept her awake, she would hum Motown classics, the same song she had choreographed decades earlier, her voice barely audible, but her timing still perfect. Despite her circumstances, Rose maintained the impeccable standards that had made her legendary at Motown. Her hospital gown was always neat, her few personal belongings arranged with military precision, and she never allowed herself to appear anything less than graceful when doctors or nurses entered her room. This fierce protection of her dignity made her suffering all the more poignant. When Pelicano presented his findings to Michael, the superstar's reaction was something his inner circle had never witnessed before. Michael Jackson, the man who had maintained his composure through family scandals, tabloid attacks, and career pressures, broke down completely. For the first time in his adult life, fame came second to human connection. "I'm going to see her," Michael announced, standing up from his Neverland Ranch office chair. "I'm going to the hospital right now." Frank DeLeo was aghast. "Mike, the media, the publicity, maybe we could arrange for Miss Williams to come here when she's better, or—" "No," Michael interrupted, his voice firm with an authority that brooked no argument. "She taught me everything I know about moving with soul. She believed in me when I was nobody. The least I can do is be there when she needs someone to believe in her." Michael's decision to make an unannounced visit to Rose's hospital room sent his management team into controlled chaos. Never before had he made such a personal, private visit to anyone outside his immediate family. Security had to be arranged, protocols had to be created from scratch, and excuses had to be made to explain why Michael's evening would be mysteriously cleared. On that warm August evening, Michael Jackson walked through the corridors of Cedars-Sinai, wearing a simple black jacket and carrying a bouquet of white roses from his Neverland gardens. He had insisted on minimal security, just one bodyguard, and had asked that no photographs be taken. This wasn't about publicity or image management. This was about a debt of the heart that had been 30 years in the making. Rose Williams was propped up in her hospital bed, reading a worn copy of The Great Gatsby by the window light, when the soft knock came at her door. Sarah Chen, the night nurse, had been told only that Rose was receiving a very special visitor. When the door opened and a familiar figure stepped inside, Rose's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. The book slipped from her hands as she stared at the man in the doorway. Even weakened by illness, even 30 years older, she recognized those eyes, that shy smile, the way he held his head slightly tilted when he was nervous. "Michael," she whispered, her voice cracking with disbelief. "Is it really you?" "Hello, Miss Rose," Michael said softly, using the same respectful address he had used as a child. "I heard you weren't feeling well." For the next 3 hours, the outside world ceased to exist for both of them. They sat in Rose's hospital room, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the distant sounds of medical equipment, and talked as they hadn't talked since 1970. Rose, despite her illness, retained the sharp mind and warm heart that had made her such an exceptional teacher. She regaled Michael with stories from their Motown days, reminding him of his early struggles with the more complex routines, his breakthrough moments, and the day he had finally mastered the spin that would later become part of his signature moonwalk. "Do you remember," Rose asked with a twinkle in her tired eyes, "when you told me you didn't want to learn the slow songs because fast dancing was more fun? You said ballads were boring because there was no room for fancy footwork." Michael smiled genuinely for the first time in months. "You told me that the most beautiful dancing happens when the movement comes from the heart, not the feet. You were right about everything, Miss Rose." As they talked, Michael began to understand the true scope of Rose's sacrifice. Not only had Rose devoted her prime years to Motown's young artists, but she had done so at considerable personal cost. During the label's golden years, when most women her age were building their own families and pursuing their own dreams, Rose had been dedicated entirely to nurturing other people's children, other people's talents. "Did you ever regret it?" Michael asked gently. "Giving up so much of your own life for us kids?" Rose considered the question seriously, her eyes never leaving Michael's face. "Regret? Never. I got to watch magic happen every single day. I got to see you grow from a little boy who couldn't sit still for 5 minutes into you. How could I regret being part of that miracle?" Michael's eyes filled with tears, a sight that would have made headlines around the world if anyone had been there to witness it. "Miss Rose, the failure is entirely mine. You should never have been forgotten, never have been left to face this alone. You gave me the foundation that built my entire career, and I failed to honor that gift." But Michael's real surprise was something Rose never saw coming. Before leaving that night, Michael took her hands in his and made her a promise that would change everything. "Miss Rose, you will never want for anything again. But more than that, I want to make sure that no one who helped create the magic ever finds themselves forgotten." True to his word, Michael immediately arranged for Rose to receive the finest medical care money could buy. Within 24 hours, a team of the world's leading oncologists had been assembled. Within a week, Rose had been moved from the general ward to a private suite that looked more like a luxury hotel room than a hospital accommodation. But Michael's intervention went far deeper than medical bills and room upgrades. What Michael established next would secretly help hundreds of forgotten entertainment industry workers. In September 1995, just weeks after his reunion with Rose, Michael Jackson quietly established the Hidden Harmony Foundation, using his personal wealth to create an endowment that would seek out and assist former Motown employees, backup dancers, studio musicians, and other entertainment industry workers who had fallen on hard times. The foundation operated in complete secrecy, with a small team of investigators tasked with finding retired performers and crew members who might be struggling with poverty, illness, or isolation. Michael's regular visits to Rose became one of the most closely guarded secrets of his later years. Every few weeks, the King of Pop would slip quietly into Cedars-Sinai, where he and his former teacher would spend hours discussing music, current events, and memories of their shared past. Rose, reinvigorated by her improved circumstances and the knowledge that she had not been forgotten, began writing her memoirs with Michael's enthusiastic encouragement. In her book titled Teaching the King, Motown Memories and the Boy Who Danced with Magic, Rose wrote with characteristic insight about the young performer who would become the world's biggest entertainer. She described Michael's early determination, his perfectionist streak, and his deep sensitivity that made him both a magnificent performer and a vulnerable human being. Rose's memoirs, published privately in 1998, included a touching foreword written by Michael himself, another unprecedented personal gesture. In it, he wrote, "Miss Rose gave me more than dance steps. She gave me the understanding that movement is the body's way of expressing what the heart cannot say in words. Every stage I've ever graced, every audience I've ever moved, every moment of magic I've ever created can be traced back to Room A at Hitsville, USA, and a patient woman who saw potential in a hyperactive 7-year-old. This book is not just her story, it is the story of how one dedicated teacher can literally change the world." The Hidden Harmony Foundation that grew from Rose's situation operated with quiet efficiency and Michael's personal oversight. By 1999, it had identified and assisted over 150 former Motown employees and other entertainment industry veterans, from retired backup singers to former sound engineers, session musicians to costume designers. Each case was handled with complete discretion, ensuring that the dignity of the recipients was never compromised. Michael personally reviewed every application, often adding handwritten notes of gratitude and remembrance. When Rose passed away in 2001, what she left behind would ensure Michael's secret mission continued long after both of their deaths. Rose Williams died peacefully in her private suite on a spring morning, surrounded by flowers from Michael's garden and with a letter from him at her bedside. But her final gift to her most famous student was something that would guarantee her legacy lived far beyond her own years. In her will, Rose left her modest estate back to Michael's Hidden Harmony Foundation, along with a letter that moved the entertainer to tears one final time. "My dear Michael," the letter read, "you have given me 6 beautiful final years filled with dignity, comfort, and the knowledge that my work mattered. But more importantly, you have shown that true greatness lies not in how high you can rise, but in how many people you lift up with you. I leave everything to your foundation in the hope that it will continue to remember those who create magic in shadow. The greatest lesson I ever taught you was that dancing is the heart's way of speaking. The greatest lesson you ever taught me is that gratitude never goes out of style." Michael attended Rose's funeral personally, another private gesture that surprised the small gathering of Motown veterans, but deeply moved everyone present. In his brief eulogy, Michael spoke not as a superstar, but as a former student honoring his teacher. "Miss Rose taught me that every step matters, every beat counts, and every performer deserves to be remembered," he said to the small crowd. "She taught me rhythm, timing, and stage presence. But most importantly, she taught me that the most beautiful performances happen when we dance not for applause, but for love." The foundation born from this friendship continued to operate throughout Michael's lifetime and beyond. Today, the Hidden Harmony Foundation has expanded to assist retired entertainment industry workers worldwide. Dancers, musicians, backup singers, crew members, and other industry veterans who have fallen on hard times can apply for assistance through a network of organizations established in Rose's memory. The foundation has provided aid to over 3,000 individuals and families, offering everything from medical support to housing assistance to career transition help. Michael's personal involvement in the foundation became one of his most closely held passions until his death in 2009. He would personally read letters from applicants, often adding handwritten notes of encouragement and sometimes making surprise visits to recipients. Former staff members reported that Michael kept a photograph of Rose teaching him to dance on his desk at Neverland Ranch, along with a copy of her original 1965 lesson plan that she had saved for over 30 years. When Michael Jackson died on June 25, 2009, among his personal effects was Rose Williams's original choreography notebook from the Motown years, carefully preserved for nearly 4 decades. On the margins of the faded pages, someone, presumably Michael, had written in pencil, "Steps learned, gratitude remembered, magic preserved." The Hidden Harmony Foundation continues to operate today, having provided assistance to over 8,000 individuals across the entertainment industry worldwide. Its mission statement, written personally by Michael Jackson, reads, "Those who create magic deserve to live with dignity. Those who give their talents to joy deserve support in their struggles. Those who teach the future deserve to be honored by that future." Rose Williams, the dance teacher who shaped the King of Pop, ultimately taught the world a lesson about the power of remembrance and the responsibility that comes with success. Her story reminds us that the most profound impact we can have on someone's life often comes not from grand gestures, but from the daily dedication to helping them discover their own magic. The teacher who nearly died forgotten became, in the end, the catalyst for ensuring that hundreds of other entertainment industry veterans would never be abandoned. Sometimes the greatest performances happen not on stage, but in the quiet moments when a grateful heart finally has the chance to say thank you. In the end, Rose Williams gave Michael Jackson 2 great gifts: the foundation that made him a star, and the opportunity, 30 years later, to prove that he had learned the most important lesson of all, that a crown's true value is measured not by its shine, but by its power to illuminate those who helped forge it. Michael Jackson thought he was just visiting a sick teacher in 1995. That teacher's story became the inspiration for a secret foundation that has now helped over 8,000 entertainment industry veterans live with dignity. That's not just a hospital visit. That's a legacy multiplied. That's what happens when gratitude meets action, and when the student finally gets the chance to become the teacher.